Hey, this is Snodgrass. Welcome to the Snodgrass podcast. I got a great guest for you guys today, Mr. Kenn Kelly. Kenn co-founded a company called Never Settle, which is a business software application and custom API provider. They are a digital marketing agency. I've been working with them guys, and I'm telling you, these guys are legit. They're doing our branding, our website super fast and super well. Plus, these guys are men of faith. They're all about the Father's business, and one of their goals and missions in life is to end human trafficking. So they're partnering with human trafficking organizations, doing a lot of their marketing, doing a lot of their videos, and all the digital marketing stuff and their websites to help out these human trafficking organizations. So that's one of their missions. Kenn is an all-around great guy. He also has a great story. He's been a part of several companies, but he also has a broken tragedy story that we're going to talk about losing his daughter at the end of the show. So now I want to introduce you to Mr. Kenn Kelly. What's going on, Kenn?
Not much. Excited to be here.
Yeah, man, super excited. Number one, this is the first time we've met, but I've met a lot of your members of your team at Never Settle. You guys are working on some of our projects, and I love you guys already. So you guys are doing amazing, doing our website, doing some of our marketing and our branding. So Never Settle is your company, co-founder of that, but you've been involved with a lot of different companies. But number one, I would like to ask this question, Kenn, and that is this: who is Kenn Kelly?
I would say above all else, I'm just a son. You know, I've been adopted, I've been redeemed, and I'd say nothing else matters. Like when I get that, everything else funnels through that. So I learned how to be a father, learned how to be a husband, could serve my community, but more than anything, like I'm a son, right? I was lost and I feel like I've been found.
I love that. That's a good identification. It's strong. It's value, right? It's never, someone can never take that from you. And I know that we're going to really dive into exactly what that is today on this show, because, you know, when I see you and I hear about you and watch you as you speak or you lead your company or even your family, I've heard some stories about your family as well. You lead with that, and that's really why our cross passed, Never Settle, is because I'm kind of on this journey of wanting to be all about the Father's business, and I've been wanting to partner myself with companies like and you're wanting to pour into companies that are also all about the Father's business. And I know that's how our paths crossed. But just some of the things that you've done, you've been a part of many startups in the Silicon Valley. You've been a part of some Fortune 100 companies. And now you co-founded Never Settle. So I want you to just kind of take us into that story a little bit. That Never Settle, I think, is a word that has spoken to you for some reason. So why is that? Why that word?
Yeah, great question. It really came from my life's kind of axiom at the point. I was always like a full throttle guy and came out of a lot of different broken situations, and in a lot of ways was self-deceived and thinking like I had made it myself. So I came out of all these like hard family situations or life circumstances, and then seemed to always rise to the top somehow. And there was like this piece of me was always just like, yeah, like I'm doing it. And in that, there was part of that was good. And it was just like this idea that I was never willing to settle for like less than like who God's called me to be. So I would dive in, I would go deep, like losing everything and say like, no, like there's more there for me. But again, that was mixed with probably some self-deceit. And it was like, as I grew older, Father started showing me all this stuff of like, look back, look at this like your parents weren't there, but look at this person that was there for you, that was loving you, or look for these ways that you were provided for that you didn't notice, or this teacher, or someone that cared for you. And was like, everything was like what Einstein said, right? Like I was standing on the shoulders of giants. And there was all these silent heroes in my life that had helped me get to where I was at. And I think at that point, I started getting this really clear and pure idea of what it meant to never settle. And it was something that I just said a lot. Like my sister would be dating a guy and I would just say like, is that who you want to date? And, is that who you want to marry? And she'd be like, no. I'd be like, so why would you settle for anything better than what you deserve? And it's like, all of a sudden it became this axiom.
Mm.
And when I was getting ready to start Never Settle, I'd come out of like management consulting and Silicon Valley culture and big tech and all that stuff that you said. And then I was a minority partner in a tech company. And we kind of went from nothing to super high growth in 2 years and had like no paycheck for, a year and a half, had invested some money in that. And then we got to a place where the majority owner was making decisions that to me were very unethical.
Mm.
And it got to a point where I was so uncomfortable with it that I decided that I was going to leave. And the other partners besides this main founder left as well. And in that, that was about 10 years ago. And it was 3 months before I was going to get married. And I had to go to my wife and say, hey, I know I haven't really made a paycheck for, only 6 of the last 18 months. And things are going really great right now, but I'm going to start over. Are you still in this with me? She stayed with me. And in that, I was deciding like, what's next? And I went and applied for some big tech jobs with kind of your name brand tech companies. And I remember going through a cubicle farm in maybe it was Facebook's campus, but I just was like, there's no way I could ever do this. I was like, whatever I do, I can't be in a cubicle, right? Like, don't pin me down. And I came out and I was like, I just got to do something. I got to try again. So I was like, okay, I'm going to launch another company. And I was going through this whole process of what is the company? And I came over and over to, I don't care what we do. I care how we do it. Mm. And so I was like pitching this idea to some of my friends and mentors. And I was trying to come up with a name, like what encompasses that? And I had one of my old business partners. We were talking, and in my old Gmail signature, it said like, whatever, Kenn, and then it said Never Settle. Mm. And he goes, it's right in front of you. He goes, you say this all the time. He goes, like, what you're trying to do is something that's like not settling. So why don't you call it Never Settle? And I was like, that's perfect. That's exactly what it is. Right. So for us, when we started the company, it really came to, we would strive to never settle on doing the right thing, which would mean, one, from our operating agreement to our agreements as partners, we would have biblical authority in our business. So like we look to the Bible for how we operate the business. And that would be kind of our mediator for anything that there's challenges in the company. And that we would try not to settle on a biblical standard, whatever that looked like, right? So if it means losing money or fame or whatever that may be, we would try to do the right thing first and foremost. And that kind of came out of seeing all this brokenness in different cultures and companies I was part of. What would it look like to not settle on doing the right thing? And for us, obviously that's been a journey. Like there's there's lots of areas that we've made huge mistakes and things, but we have a goal that we're constantly going towards, right? So it's a journey in progress, and we're always kind of aiming towards that. And every year, new lessons learned of how we thought we were doing something really well, but we could have done it differently.
Mm. No, I love that. I love your statement about it's not what we do, it's how we do it. And I think some people get just so sucked into, well, God wants me to do this. This is what I'm going to do. He wants me to have this as my career. And a lot of times I'm like, I don't know if he cares that much. It's really just how you do it when you're in it. And I love that. That's exactly what you said with Never Settle. And I want to ask this. We're a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs listen to this show, and some have their cubicle day jobs like you described. So what's it been like the last 10 years to go from this big tech corporate environment to now your own thing? I mean, I know you've been doing this for a decade, but yeah. What's that been like? What's that ride been like, and some of the lessons that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, and I'd say I'm not throwing stones at the cubicle. I just recognize it's not what I wanted. But what's funny is, I work from home most days now, and some people that would be terrifying. Yeah. For me, I get to spend more time with my kids. So I have little kids running around, and I get to see them. So that's good for me. But the transition, it felt pretty organic, because I'd say startup culture, especially in Silicon Valley, is pretty similar to what we did. But the journey has been, I would say it's less about the company again, and just that it was a stake in the ground that I said, okay, what would it look like to build a company on biblical values? And I remember going to some investors that I'd raised money with before, some of my co-founders, some of these other companies that had a little more limelight on them, and some really powerful, influential people. And they were all older than me. They're all mentors, and some of my business partners somewhere. And and kind of hands down, everyone said, that's a really cute idea, Ken, but you're going to get eaten alive in the business world.
Mm,
Like, I know your faith's important to you and I know all this stuff, but like, that's not how the world works. Like business world doesn't work that way. And you can hope to do it that way, but you're going to fail. And, one of the greatest ways to motivate me, my friends know this, is like to tell me it's impossible. Right.
mm,
So that like stirred something in me of a little bit of doubt, but it was more like, I don't know. I just have this unwavering thing that if God says this is the way to do it, like, or if I try to follow how he says to do it, right? There's no manual in the Bible that says this is how you run a business.
mm,
But if I try to follow his ways, like I just had this faith that like it'll work out. Right. So for me, the journey was less about the type of company or like the size or, small tech startup from big companies. It was really about my entire previous career. Every business was founded on being successful in the business world based on the rules that the business world has come up with in capitalism, right?
mm,
And this was a whole new journey of what does it look like to just try to walk out business and see what does the Bible have to say about that, right? And you were saying it's kind of like we were asking like how we do it, right? And I think A.W. Tozer says not what a man does that determines whether his work is sacred or secular. It's why he does it.
mm,
And there's the thing I'm really passionate about is like getting people off the sidelines, recognizing that their calling in the workplace is incredibly important, right? And there's always this like divide that our culture's created. There's secular and sacred work, and that's not true, right? All of humanity has been able to worship God with what they're doing, whether it's a mom taking care of her kids, or a cleaner, or a business person, or a pastor, whatever that may be. What like why we do it and how we do it is, I think, really determines whether it's sacred or not. Um, and so for me, just that journey. And when we started, I felt like this was a new idea that the Holy Spirit had like dropped on me, right? And that was again just immaturity of myself, right? And ego and all that stuff of just like, because I felt like the more time we spent studying the scriptures, like the more Holy Spirit was dropping on us of like just these really profound ways to run our company. And I was thinking, this is like new ground. Like this is where the world's going to go. And then, get more and more into it. And I see like God speaking to all these business leaders in the same way. Like his voice is consistent. He's speaking to all these people. And then I don't know, maybe 6 years ago, I did a year-long master's class through Denver Seminary and Gordon College, and I did a year-long study on the theology of work.
mm,
And what I found out is that theologians have been talking about this for hundreds of years, some like over 1,000 years. This is nothing new, right? This is an idea that theologians have been talking about. And so I would say like, that's what's been different for me is like, what does it look like to run a business? As you said, that's about the Father's business, right? Like I want to be about what he's doing. So that's been the thing that's very different. And it's been this wild ride because there's no great manual for it, right? Every day's different.
yeah. Well, I think that a lot of times when we give our life to Christ, we think that we have to go into some sort of ministry or mission work, and but one of your missions is calling marketplace leaders, entrepreneurs to use their work as ministry, to be about the Father's business, and to kind of be this bigger story. And you speak on this bigger story of you have some experiences in your own life, some brokenness, some tragedies in your own life, about this bigger story. So can you kind of dive a little bit more into you're speaking, you're on this mission, I'm calling other marketplace leaders into this bigger story. What is your mission in Never Settle, and even in Kenn Kelly's life?
I would say a bigger story comes down to the fact that as humans, whether you're agnostic or believer or believe in whatever, we all worship something, right? Um, and as a non-believer, I lived for myself, right? When I met Christ, I lived for him. And so the foundation of this was like living a bigger story to me is like, it's the point at which your focal point comes off of you and it's about him, right? And then if we take that into business, like every business has a bigger story as well. And they can either choose to live and tell the small story that's about them. They can choose to live and tell a story that's about something bigger. So for us, our tiny story would be, we're this rad marketing agency and we're doing all this stuff for our clients and we're making money and blah, 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 right? It's a really small story. Like that's about never settle. And honestly, most people don't care.
Mm.
The bigger story is that we're like a group of people that are trying to use our resources and talents to see trafficking ended in our lifetime. Like that's a story that's not about us. It's a story that's about something bigger. So when we work with businesses, like we try to invite them into that, right? And we work with a lot of businesses that have, most of our businesses are not nonprofits or faith or anything like that. But the truth is, like, whether you're a plumber or you're a university or whatever it is, there is, like, if you can tap into someone's story and you can make it worth telling, like you can create value for them in their marketplace with what they're doing. So I think we try to understand uh, what is that thing that our clients are living for? What's the bigger story that's not just about them? And ultimately, the reason we care about that is because then they can start making impact, right?
Mm.
Most of the businesses we work with are doing something more than trying to gain a paycheck. Like there's something that they're trying to do that has a positive impact in culture. We want to see that come to fruition.
No, I love that. And exactly when we started working with you, that was one of the things that I loved about you, is because you really wanted to work with companies that make kingdom impact or some sort of impact. And I really was attracted by some of the work that you've done with human trafficking. I want to talk about that a little bit. So if you go to your website, you kind of have partnered and with videos about human trafficking, bringing awareness with human trafficking. You're also on the background of just helping some of these organizations that are already on the front lines of human trafficking, rescuing victims. And so talk to us about your passion about that, and when did that become important to you?
Yeah, it became important to me within the first 30 seconds that I heard about it. So I'd say there's kind of like life before knowing it existed and then like life after.
Mm.
And an organization called I Empathize, a guy named Brad Riley who runs that, is now a dear friend and a partner organization with Never Settle, came to my church and told me about this thing, that there's children that are being um, sexually assaulted daily for exchange of money and goods and power and all this stuff. And I was just like, that's not true. And then start unpacking. This is happening in the U.S. This is happening in my city. This isn't an over there problem. And I need to get an actual date and figure it out. But that's probably like 15 to 18 years ago, somewhere around that.
Mm.
And I was so horrified that like somebody could do this to a child. And not that it's good to an adult either. Like it's all bad, but there was just something that shook the core of my being and just pure disbelief. So I just went into the weeds and just went as deep as I could. And I was just thinking like, this isn't as bad as he's saying. And the deeper I went, the more I realized like he was actually kind of sugarcoating it. It's actually way worse than what he was doing, because there's only so much you can share in a church service. And a lot of people's reactions are all over the board, between shutting it down to disbelief to shock and awe to like total involvement. But for me, it was just like, wow, I can't believe that exists. Right. So something shifted in me, and I just said, I want to be part of the solution. And um, six years ago ish, we had done a documentary with I Empathize, and they followed this woman named Norma Bastidas, and we created this documentary called Be Relentless. And she was a survivor of trafficking that ran away from Mexico to Canada, actually. So when she was 18, she escaped, and she ran and just hitchhiked all the way across the US and went up to Canada, and then just lived a normal life, ended up having kids. And she became this ultra marathon, like super athlete. And her husband and her family knew, but no one else knew her story.
Mm.
And she had done so many successful things that Oprah invited her to be on her show. Oprah calls her the bravest woman she knows. Oprah called her the bravest woman that Oprah had known.
Mm.
And she has this kind of like, I wouldn't call it crisis, but just like deep conflict in her, thinking like, I'm not that brave. I haven't told anybody my story.
Mm.
And so she meets up with Brad and the team at I Empathize. And and they decide they're going to do this documentary. And so she's going to shatter the world's record for triathlons. And she basically does the equivalent of 31 triathlons in 31 days,
Wow.
and basically swims across the Gulf of Mexico, bikes from, from central Mexico close to DC, and then runs another 600 miles to the capital or whatever. Um, and just like, I mean, shatters it, right? Like
Wow.
the closest record is maybe 1/20th of what she did, and just like dominates this. And every day we had to stop, and people are like, why are you doing this? And it's to raise awareness so she can tell her story and bring awareness really between Mexico and the US of just this problem that's that's happening. And so I was telling you that story for a reason. Like getting involved in that was like, so I empathize with kind of the entry point for me understanding. 6 years later, we're doing this. We did the documentary, and I had the opportunity to speak there, and I was praying about what to do. And I just felt like I didn't have words. And I was like, I was wanted to do something to tell the importance of Norma's story and this film. And then I empathize in what they were doing to get people to get behind it.
Mm.
And I felt like God like gave me nothing prepared. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna trust you. I'm gonna go up there. And like he put a burden on my heart, and like I just started crying when I was on stage. And um I ended up saying something that has now like really impacted me, but was not planned. But I ended up saying, like, I don't want to look at my grandchildren in the face and have them ask me, like, why didn't you do something about it? Like, you knew this was going on. Why didn't you do something about it? Right. And
Mm.
you can look back at Nazi Germany. It's not that long ago. Our grandparents were there, right? And that was a question for me as a kid, was like, man, everybody knew this was happening, but no, like if people rallied together, they could have stopped it. And I just had this like breakdown moment on stage where I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know if like how I'm gonna do it, but I cannot face my grandchildren, right? And
Mm.
have them say, like, hey, like you were aware. Why did like it's not an excuse to say it's too big of a problem or whatever. And so,
Yeah.
but that was probably the deeper pivotal moment. Was like, for a long time I was trying to figure out what to do. And we did missional work overseas and lived in a safe house with girls who rescued out of trafficking, and did a lot of stuff connecting them to churches and all that. But it wasn't until which after that we'd come home and that event, that there was something in me that said, wow, like a part of my life story has to be about seeing this end before I die.
Mm.
I cannot be passive on the sidelines. And so that's opened up a daily question, right?
Yeah.
How do I make an impact? So we partner with organizations. We try to build technologies to do it, and it's an ongoing uh, education, right? Every day, like how can I actually make an impact with my family, my business, the resources that God has trusted me with?
Mm. So, when you talk about the bigger story, I mean, obviously, anyone who hears or sees a documentary on human trafficking, I feel like you'd have to almost be a monster not to be some sort of impacted. And there's obviously a lot of things going on in the world, but have you asked your questions like why more people don't get involved with something like this, don't want to make more impact, don't want to do more good, that live in the small story? And I think that's one of your missions. Is I was kind of reading over, just is to get more people involved. What's been some of the responses that people like? Yeah, is it too big of a problem? Does it not matter to them because it's not their child? I don't know.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. I think when I first found out about it, I was a lot more zealous, and I thought I had a lot more answers, which was really judgment on why people are or not, right? And I don't feel that way anymore. I want more people to want to care and to do stuff, but at the same time, like everyone has their own story, right? Their own brokenness, their own tragedies that they're working through. And there's lots of calls between taking care of the orphans and the widows, and being the light of the world, right? That he would be glorified. So I would say I don't have a clear answer for you on that. I hope that my actions can inspire other people to take their resources and their time and make an impact. But I also know that there's different types of people. People are wired very differently, right? So I think one of the best things to do is to when we're talking to people about this, let them know there's lots of ways to help, right? There's some people like they just cannot hear about it because they will literally shut down. Like
Mm-hmm.
everything in their life will shut down. And I think that speaks to there's probably something else that God wants to work on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he wants them to be whole. And so there's probably other brokenness, but that's not my job. That's not anybody else's job. But what I can do is I can say, hey, here's an organization that just needs someone to do accounting or whatever it is. And you don't have to know about these stories. You don't have to see them, but you can put your time and your effort into making a difference without doing it. Right. And there's other people that are just like, I'm fired up. Like I want to do something. I can't just sit down. Right. Like send me in, coach. And they like want to go on a trip and like see a brothel shut down. Right. It's like, okay, like here's an organization that does that. Let's get you connected.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just understanding we're wired differently and that kind of stuff impacts people very, very differently. But there's a lot, like we can all contribute, and if we don't, we're not enemies, right? We're the body, we're eyes and kneecaps and elbows and
Mm-hmm.
everything in between, right? And so people have different roles and different responsibilities. But for me, and Never Settle, which is really cool, like the whole company's kind of bought into this, right? So our company has bought into this idea that we want to see this ended,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so there's lots of different things that we're doing in that. But I would say that's been the most important thing for me is to let go of my judgment and just like really worry about me, right? There's that it's like convicting verse. I think it's the end of John, the Gospel of John, and it's right before the end, and uh Peter's talking to Jesus, and Jesus tells him like, hey, you do love me, and you're gonna basically tells him like you're gonna die on a cross, like in the same death that I die. And Peter looks over at John and says, well, but what about him? And Jesus says like you worry about you, Peter. And so that's like I think I live healthy when I have that, right? Like I
Yeah.
obviously don't. I worry about lots of other things, but when I can really worry about what am I doing with my resources,
Yeah.
my time, my energy, my prayer, that's where I end up having a real impact,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I know, and again, we're kind of running a little bit short on time, but I know that I just wanted to kind of mention too, you and your family had your own tragedy and brokenness a couple of years ago, and you went through something that no family ever wished that they would go through, and that's losing a child. And um, I know that that's a whole nother show that we probably going to have you back on and talk about, but that was about over 2 years ago, and you went through a very trying time losing your baby, and you can kind of talk to us about that a little bit. But I really want you to just talk about the impact of that and these last 2 years of waking up each day and asking yourself the question about intentionality. Did that shift after that happen? But take a few minutes and just kind of tell us this story.
Yeah, you're right. Uh, there's a lot of things I've been through. None were the same as having a child die in your arms, and um, I would say I'm a work in progress on that one. And the one thing I know is I've never been angry with God about it. I don't have any questions for that. Um, I wish it never happened. And I the things that my daughter Talia taught me through that experience were um, asking what love would do, and that's actually from somebody else. I'm trying to remember his name, Sean Bowles, I think. Uh, and but I saw that in action, and just like every day. So we were in the NICU for quite a while, and just lots of things that happened. And when I could come back and say, okay, what would love do? Like that was like a guiding light for me. Like, how do I respond to this in the moment? And the other thing that really shaped me was choosing not to operate from fear. Just knowing that when I make a decision based on fear, it's going to be the wrong one. So for us, one of the really pivotal moments was the doctors were pressuring us to take her off a ventilator. So she wasn't able to breathe very well, and she was on a ventilator. She had no support for her heart or anything else like that. And we just had made this agreement that when her heart stops, then like if it stops, then that's when we'll call, we'll take her off the ventilator or whatever. And the sicker that she got, the more the doctors were just like put a ton of pressure on, and they were operating probably out of what they thought was best. But I realized society is so scared of pain, like so afraid of fear itself, that they're willing to do anything, even stupid things. And so the doctors they would come to us, and they would try to get my wife alone, because when we were together, we were like really strong, but they would like try to find her when I was like going to the bathroom or something. And they put on all this fear tactic, and they would just say like, she's suffering, like you guys are suffering. You could end all this, like all this suffering would go away. Mm. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like that's a coward's journey. Like who cares if my heart hurts right now because she's in the hospital? Like she's alive. Like that matters more than any suffering that I could go through. Right. And they were what I saw is that the more that we got grounded in preserving life and standing for life, the more they freaked out that we weren't like willing to just call it quits. Right. And they put a ton of pressure on it. And one night, I'm months of maybe 3 hours of sleep, and I'm very, very delirious and not making good decisions. And they just had laid it on us so thickly, and like we felt so guilty. And we were just like, we really should do this. Like, yeah, like we can end all this pain that we're in. We can end our daughter's pain. And I was like, okay, let's sleep for a little bit. I woke up, I started praying, and I felt like the Holy Spirit was so clear and just said, like you can never make a good decision based out of fear. So like, don't at minimum, just pause. Right. So that's something I feel like I've taken with me, is just to recognize that as an indicator. Like as soon as I see fear entering the thing, it's just like, okay, pause. I'm going to make a bad decision here. Yeah. And so that's been like a really, really powerful lesson. And what ended up happening is we were able to take a breath and think about it. And was just like, no, like that's like her dying that does not make things right. Right. That's a short-term solution to a long-term problem. And so, yeah, not making decisions based out of fear is one of those things. But, I could talk about her forever. So she's taught me thousands of things. But that was probably one of the more impactful ones.
Yeah. Well, that's another show that I think we should have you back on, Ken. So I know that I would love, I don't want to brush over this story. I know there's a lot we can learn from that. And just, again, it's probably geared you up more for living on mission, taking every day and not taking it for granted, right? And you're calling other men like myself and in the marketplace to live on mission as well. And so I want to talk, just to kind of wrap this up, with Never Settle, because you guys love to partner with people, organizations that are making an impact. And you've done so much for us already. You've done a lot of our branding. You're putting our website together right now and doing a lot of consulting with us, and really just helping put this puzzle together of our brand, because sometimes when you're in it, it's just hard because you're too in it. It's like you need that other company to give you the blueprint and the outline. But if someone wants to kind of partner with Never Settle, like what does that even look like?
Yeah. I think, we're a full digital agency. So we do everything from branding to advertising and web development, apps and all of that stuff. But we're really interested in helping companies that want to make an impact, right? That they see something greater. They understand the accountability of what we look at when we look at stewardship, which is our finances, the talent our team has, and the time that we have, right? How are we investing that really well? So we want to pull that glory out of people. I think a lot of people get lost in like, I'm just a CPA, like this is what I do, but there's something deeper. So I think that's the businesses and the people we're most excited about is helping people find their bigger story, help them. I believe it starts with me. Like I need to live a bigger story first if I want to, if I want to create a bigger story. So it's like, it starts with what I'm doing. And so we help people grow their businesses. It's probably like it's marketing and business growth, but to us, it's really about how do we find that story and help bring it to life so that people can wake up and be excited about what they're doing to make an impact and the things that they're passionate about in their local community.
I love that. And where can someone find out? Is just your website?
Yeah, neversettle.it is the best place to find us. And yeah.
Sounds good. Awesome. We're going to put that in our show notes, guys, on the YouTube channel, so check that out. Kenn, I always end every show with a couple of fire round questions, so created a few for you. So number one, best book recently read?
That would be the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. I think it's by Mark Comer. That was an incredible book.
That's awesome. I actually just listened to that like last week, and I listened to it literally in a day and a half. It was, yeah, really good. So it's still very fresh. All right, favorite project that you've worked on?
My favorite project is our all hands retreats. So our team is remote. A lot of us are based in Denver, but we have people all over the U.S. and a couple overseas. And every year we get together in one central location and get to spend some time learning and growing, having fun together. And while I love serving our clients and everything, I'm like so passionate about our people. And I'm passionate about like us taking care of our people first, and that we could have a thriving culture. Like if we want to help people tell bigger stories, like we have to live one. And so the thing that gets me the most excited is that, and it's like investing into our people and getting to plan gifts and surprises and adventures and stuff like that's just the thing I get really fired up about.
That's awesome. Love that. All right, last one. Your favorite thing that you get to do with your success platform?
Twofold, probably just spend time with my family. I feel ridiculously blessed that I get to spend so much time with my family. Like we have a 40-hour work cap at Never Settle, and I work from home, so I get to see my like little girls and my wife, and that's a huge blessing. Not everybody gets to do that, right? And that wasn't my story with my parents growing up. So that feels number one. And the second one is just thinking about ourselves as like deployer of resources. Like Father's given us this checkbook to deploy his resources, how he wants them done. And so when I get to do that, specifically in missions or anti-trafficking work, like that feels like the greatest honor in the world, that he would even allow me to trust me with his resources, right? All of it's his. And so like everything I do matters and it's all his, but I get to be a deployer of what he's done. And when I get to deploy it to the things that I think are really close to his heart, that's something that feels like, wow, like I'm doing something that matters. That's worthwhile.
I love that. That's awesome. You're speaking to my heart, Kenn. So that's amazing. That's a wrap for today's show, Kenn. I really appreciate you and the Never Settle team. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Brett Snodgrass podcast, and God bless you, buddy.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for checking out the Brett Snodgrass channel. If you like this video, please slam on that like button. And if you really like it, then subscribe to our channel here. And remember to leave us a comment below, and I'm going to try my hardest to reply to all the comments. Thank you guys so much. This is why I do what I do. Every single week, I come out with content that focuses on success, freedom, and living out your purpose. Thank you guys so much. See you next time.